Hi, I'm Sue.
And I'm Tim.
And welcome to episode 3 of our couch conversations. Now, technically, we are not on the couch, we're looking at the couch, but our good friend Mark Lee, who does all kinds of living room concerts, local musician here, keeping us entertained during the quarantine, gave us a few suggestions for our couch conversations. He said we need a little more vibe.
To vibe it up a little bit, so we just moved away from the couch, which was kind of plain, and we're back over by our roaring fireplace with some candles lit, and it's got a vibe to it.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better about it. So the idea here of these couch conversations or living room conversations or whatever they're called is that we sit and talk about, some of what we're thinking about, maybe what you're thinking about too, our favorite subjects, which happen to be wine, music, and whatever else comes
Pops
up.
into our head.
Yeah.
And maybe you're doing the same thing. We'd also, we got a ton of some kind of a fun music topic to chat about before we do, but let's talk about tonight's wine selection and two favorite local hangouts.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we want to talk about, we bought tonight's wine selection from Sue's River Regency Wine in Fairlawn, and it's one of Sue's favorites, and it's called La Volte. We've got a bottle up here on our mantelpiece.
Yeah, first of all, we can't say enough about Susan. We love her. She's really knowledgeable about wine. And her restaurant, they have these delicious small plates. Along with wine, it's a wine bar. What's your favorite?
Favorite dish?
Yeah.
Oh, I think, that's a tough one. We like the flatbread pizzas, but now the three little sliders. We've had sliders all over the country now, and these rate the highest.
Yeah, you like them better than any ones you've ever had anywhere. They're
We've had them in
favorites.
some pretty fancy places.
I know, but hers are the best. Anyway, and she has live music too.
Yeah, on Saturday nights from 8 until 11. No cover charge.
Yeah, and she will again someday.
Yeah.
So that's one of our favorite places. And our second, although we bought the wine there, the first place I ever tried La Volte wine was our other favorite place, and that is Vaccaro's Trattoria, a wonderful Italian restaurant if you haven't been there, and a wonderful wine restaurant. And Raphael, the proprietor,
Very knowledgeable.
he knows what he's talking about when it comes to wines, especially Italian wines, and they're known for their Italian wines over at Vaccaro. So if you like, as we do, the big full wines that you get in Italy, I first learned of the La Volte, which is a Ornellaia. Ornellaia. I'm sure I'm not saying it perfectly. And the Ornellaia is a wonderful, big, expensive wine. This is kind of the little brother from the same estate, and it's called La Volte, but it is just a wonderful Super Tusk that we just love. And it's a little more expensive than our normal. We are trying to keep them 20 or under. This one's about 33, I think.
If it's got a price tag of $19.99, it piques our interest. This one, about $10 more, but it's still very much worth it.
Yes.
Shall we try it?
Yes, let's do it.
There we go.
Cheers. I just love this one.
It's got a good nose.
I don't even know how to describe all that stuff. I just know what I like, and
I'm amazed at people that can pick out notes of things that I never would have picked up on.
Smoky,
It's tasty,
fruity,
yeah.
fruit forward.
A bit
I don't
of
know.
chocolate, a little bit of smoke, a little bit of...
I just know. Oh, I like that. I can tell if something's too fruity though, because I don't really like I love Pinot Noirs, and some of them can get a little fruity, but
We do like them dry.
yes,
Right.
well, drier. I don't like Bordeaux dry.
Yeah, not too
You
dry.
do. You're
I
more
do.
of a dry person, and you're not a dry person.
Got a dry sense of humor.
So, speaking of all that, how are you feeling about all this stuff?
I feel pretty good,
we're,
actually.
We're 4 weeks?
I think it's a month now. We're over a month.
Officially, because it was, I'm trying to remember the exact date in March where he said stay at home. And we've
You know
been,
what it was? I felt like it was right before St. Patrick's Day because we all had
Oh,
plans
yes.
for St. Patty's Day, which was 17th.
Right.
And now here it is the 19th of April.
So, and we've heard a lot of talk about opening back up, and I'm nervous about that, I'll be honest. Not to even remotely get political, we're not going to go there in this conversation, or probably in any conversation because it's dangerous, but the thing that kind of bugs me a little is this whole situation has gotten political. It seems like there are opinions. All I care about is safety and health and leadership, and I really think, I like the way Governor DeWine's been handling things. And he says May 1st he may start opening up. I'm nervous about that, but I'm hearing that he's going to be super conservative. I don't know what that means. And I know I'm going to still be conservative.
I feel he's probably going to do it methodically in the same way that he closed things little by little.
Yeah.
Every day you learned about something, it wasn't happening automatically. It'd be like, on Friday we're going to stop doing this, and then the following week it might have been something else. So maybe little by little it'll open up slowly, and that's probably what we need.
Yeah, and I'm going to still be doing some of the things we've talked about, wearing masks everywhere, washing my hands constantly. Forever. I think our habits have changed.
Exactly.
Forever.
Yeah.
For the good. And you know, that's something we continue to talk about.
Having lived through this as we have now, I think we'll.
And I hope
be
we continue to live through this.
I hope we all continue to exercise some caution and
Yeah.
we'll say distance, but perhaps.
You know, we just got off the phone before we did this. We got off the phone, a Zoom meeting
Zoom
with
call, yeah.
our kids who live in Florida, West Palm Beach, and they're not happy with how slow the whole process was down there in closing things down. And now everyone's saying, oh, they shouldn't have opened up the beaches. They should have closed the beaches for spring break, and that was chaos. But you know, they both feel, and they haven't been out of the house at all, and they're young, and they're really being careful, and other than to go to the store and stuff. But they feel, as I do, being outside is important, as long as you can keep the social distancing.
Yeah.
If the parks are open in Ohio, and I'm thrilled they are, I know people get crazy, and you shouldn't congregate. But if you can keep your distance, you should be outside. And the beaches should be open if you can walk on the beach.
It's a respiratory illness.
Yeah.
That's where it really does begin. And as they pointed out, and we all know, getting outside and enjoying fresh air, getting fresh air, instead of maybe being clustered inside a house.
Seems
where,
healthier.
Yeah, where dirty air could be. Yeah, it would be a good idea.
Yeah.
And get to fresh air.
And we also heard that some of the pictures that were shown on TV were kind of stock pictures.
Yeah.
And that actually they were flying a drone over Jacksonville Beach, and it wasn't that crowded. So I think they were using a shot from spring break or something.
That's true.
So I'm hopeful that, you know, being outside in a smart way and not in big crowds is good. Anyway, but you're feeling
I feel
positive?
I think because of what we do, I mean, I do get to go to work a little bit, but I think very soon work will keep me here. Because
Yeah.
I'll be able to do my work from home very soon.
And I've been here
You've been
the
here.
whole time.
You're keeping busy.
Yeah.
We're busy with our pets. We're taking our dog, who you can't see, but he's sacked out right to the right of Sue over there.
We take them on like 100
Yeah,
walks
he
a
goes
day.
on all kinds of walks. I think we get fresh air. We eat well. When we do go out, we exercise caution. We wear masks and gloves. And then we come back and we do this. We talk to you guys.
Yeah, because clearly I
And
am
we
not
drink
getting
wine.
out much. Yeah, we're probably all drinking too much and not exercising enough. Well, anyway, so getting back to work and what you do, you scour the internet and your brain, because you're Tim Doherty, the Rock and Roll Authority, for interesting tidbits about music to share with your listeners and also your readers, because you have a blog.
I do have a blog. It is hosted on the radio station's website, WLNE.net. I gave it a big overall title called This Week in Rock. What I like to do is I like to find things that happen like in a week, any particular given week. And I kind of like to weave it together with a little thread, so to speak. And it's my own weird take on some things, so I hope you don't mind that.
Sometimes you do have a weird take.
But it's actually, I'm kind of impressed. It's getting a lot of readers.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, well, I'm not
getting
surprised at all.
700, like 2,000 reads on some of them, and I'm pretty impressed. Thank you.
Well, we're going to talk about today, which is, it came up because you had a kind of a thing that made me feel old, but we're going to talk about B-sides, because you talked about a B-side of an album. But we first have to explain what a B-side is, because this is vinyl. If you're our age, you know what vinyl is, and now it's making a huge comeback. But it used to be an album was delivered, and there'd be 14, 15 songs on one side and the other, and you'd listen to all of it. But when it came to delivering songs to radio, the record label would bring in a single.
There you go.
Well, yeah.
Do the visual aid?
Yes. And
It's
it
about
would
this
look
size.
like this. Usually it would have a larger hole. This is probably so you can play it on an album thing, but this is actually an autographed Eric Church 45.
Uh-huh.
I love Eric Church. And again, the fact that Eric Church is putting out vinyl is popular again.
Very
But this
cool.
was a 45, and the singles on the one side that they're delivering to you, and on the other side was the B side. So the A side was the hit, what they wanted to be the hit.
Right.
And the hole was much larger, and you needed to fill it with a little plastic thing to put it on where the albums, and so...
Which actually look like this right here. This is one of those things.
So...
Which I don't know what it's called.
An adapter?
An adapter, some kind of an adapter.
Anyway, they sell these all over at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the gift shop. But you and I neither of us have a tattoo. Maybe that's TMI. But you just always said if you got a
might do
tattoo, you
something
wanted
like
to
this
be
right here.
that. I think that would be cool.
We both have made our living out of doing this,
Yes.
so that would be an appropriate tat.
So anyway, on the A side, you had a factoid about a single that was delivered to radio. When?
50 years ago.
This week.
And we were, rocks us back on our heels because we remember the song very well.
Yes.
Now the song was called Take Me to the Pilot. It was by Elton John, who was very young in the day, it was 50 years ago. But on the other side was another song that some of the DJs, once they delivered that 45 to the radio station, say, here's a song we'd like you to play, Take Me to the Pilot. Some DJs back in those days, they had a little bit more power, a little bit more leeway. Some of them would flip it over, many probably did, flipped it over and dropped the needle on the other side just to hear what was on it. And that happened to be a song called Your Song.
Your Song.
Your Song
was
by
the
Elton
B side. It was not the single release. I never knew that.
Take Me to the Pilot was a little rockier. That's probably why they thought this would be a good one.
It's a cool song too.
Your Song is a beautiful song.
No, I mean Take Me to the
Take Me
Pilot
to the
is a really
Pilot's
good song,
awesome.
but I don't think a lot of people know that song.
That is a very
so
good
look it
song.
up
Take Me to
because
the Pilot.
if you're not familiar with it, and a lot of people our age are, but and that was the very first Elton John's album that was just called Elton John.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else was on that. I don't know where Honky Chateau came after that, but one of my favorite
Soon
songs
after.
that was never a huge hit is Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's.
Very good song. You can tell that we've been in this profession a long time because we play the songs that are hits designated as such, but we'd like to go a little deeper and hear the other stuff.
And there's a whole lot of interesting songs that were delivered to radio. Again, as Tim said, the label would come and deliver it straight to the DJ and the program director. But back in the 60s and 70s, the DJs were the stars, and they made decisions about what they played. And one show in the morning might be different than the afternoon drive guys show if they picked different things to play. And with the payola scandal and all that, and record labels and people and artists paying, hey, play this one.
That's when a few more times.
All that kind of stopped and got more control. But there were a lot of songs like that. A couple more songs that I find interesting were starting with Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart, he had a big song that record people wanted the radio stations to play. It was called Reason to Believe. And I heard it from Rod Stewart's mouth one time that there was a disc jockey in Cleveland, we don't know who.
Yeah, he never said who.
I could take guesses, but he flipped it over and he liked the song on the other side better, and it was called Maggie May.
So Maggie May came out of Cleveland when everybody else, we assume, was playing Reason to Believe. And Reason to Believe ended up being a great song, actually.
It's a good song.
On that MTV Unplugged.
Yeah.
It actually became a hit in the late
later,
90s, Queen, We Are the Champions, was the single released to radio, and the B-side was equally huge, We Will Rock You. Yeah. So, those are two examples of huge anthem hits on both sides of a Queen record.
Interesting factoid about the Rolling Stones, Honky Tonk Woman was the single release, but on the other side was a song called You Can't Always Get What You Want. Imagine that.
And all I can think about was last night's performance.
Yeah. Did you see that?
So last night was that great show for what was it called?
It was Global Citizen.
At
Home Together.
At Home Together.
At home.
And a benefit for those on the front lines and the World Health Organization. But anyway, they had, I don't know, I think it was several hours long, like 4 or 5 hours long. And I can't think of an artist that is still around today putting out music that was not on last night. I'm sure there was somebody, but...
And they were clips from their own personal places, studios, their own homes.
But the Rolling Stones did You Can't Always Get What You Want. And the highlight for me was the mystery of the air drums that Charlie was playing. Because it didn't look like, he was playing the drums, but there are these things called free drums. And you put, it's a device you put on your drumstick, you put them on your feet, and you attach it to a program. He very well could have been playing free drums.
I think he was.
But it looked as though he did a track and he was just playing air drums, and nobody completely knows would have to.
There was no kit in front of Charlie Watts whatsoever.
No, but
he was just kind of drumming in the air, but it was making.
But
noise.
he had like funny things in front of him, and he'd hit the cymbal over off the side. Anyway, it was. But oh god.
Look that one up if you haven't seen it.
And another real highlight for me was Keith Urban doing Higher Love, and he did it, and then he had another of him come in over here and another of him come in
so three
over
Keith
here.
Urbans
Three Keiths
playing together, harmonizing.
3 different guitars, one electric, one acoustic, another rhythm lead. unbelievable, and harmony with himself. It was just
Kind of cool, kind of split screen.
yeah. I mean, there were a million. God, you could do a whole show on those, but that was a million. Tell us about the Kiss, because this is a good story. It's a rock, and they're the ultimate rock band.
Kiss, of course, you know, their farewell tour, that's probably going to go on for several more years, so don't.
Well, now,
don't
because
sweat
there's
it.
no tour.
Yeah. 1976, they recorded a ballad called Beth for their album Destroyer. That wasn't really what they wanted to put on the album, but it happened to be on the other side of a song called Detroit Rock City.
Which was the single.
That was the single, but on the other side was probably the biggest selling record, or highest charting record by Kiss of all time, and that was Beth by Kiss. Kiss fans aren't crazy about that because it's so mellow.
But
and Peter Criss sings it, the drummer sang it, and it was like, I mean, I hear from Kiss fans, they want to hear the hard driving Kiss songs, but this was still the biggest one.
But here's what I love about that story, though. It was in Ontario, DJ, right across from Detroit, a woman, and her name was Rosalie Tremblay. And she was the music director, and she flipped the single over, and she heard this ballad, and she played it, and her daughter loved it. So she started playing Beth when everybody else was playing the rock single.
Detroit Rock City.
And
which would have made sense right across the river from Detroit.
Yeah.
She should have been playing Detroit Rock City.
But anyway, so she plays Beth and continues playing it. It started catching on, and it crossed it over to pop radio. And so that was one song that got played on adult contemporary radio and pop radio when all the other ones didn't. So in a way, it elevated them and made them more familiar to people who didn't just listen to them for rock. So years later, they realized that favor, and they presented Tremblay's daughter, who loved the song, with a gold record to say thank you. So that's pretty cool.
Let's talk about the Doobie Brothers. They're soon to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and hopefully their 50th anniversary tour will go off without a hitch, but we'll wait and see on that.
Yeah.
They put out a song called Black Water. It was the B-side to the other song on the other side, which was supposed to be the hit, your favorite, Another Park, Another Sunday.
I love Another Park, Another Sunday, but I also love Black Water.
Yeah.
And the incredible harmonies in Black Water. How could they have not picked that as the single? But they didn't. They picked Another Park, Another Sunday, which when we went to see them 2 years ago at Blossom, they didn't play it. And I was like, oh man. And you talked to Tom Johnson about it.
I told him, we loved your show. It was a great show. My wife's favorite song, though, you didn't play. And apparently their set list included, a lot of the hits, some stuff that was newer,
and
then ballads. And we happened to be on the show date where instead of Another Park, Another Sunday, they played South City Midnight Lady.
Which is a really cool song, too. But they both have the same feel.
He said the next time we probably played Another Park at the next city, wherever that was, Toledo, I don't know.
And I missed it.
We missed it.
So you spent pretty much your whole career in rock radio. I spent most of my career in pop radio. Soft rock, adult contemporary, whatever term you'd use for it. So some of the songs we definitely both played, but where I played the Celine Dion's and the Mariah Careys and the Whitney Houstons, you didn't play those in rock radio. But some artists we shared. We'd play the ballad of Beth, but we would never play Hotter Than Hell or anything like that.
Firehouse.
But I think a lot of rock stations early on played a lot of Chicago records. And I know we did, but "Make Me Smile" was the single that was released, and I think it was a fairly big hit for them. But on the other side of "Make Me Smile" was "Color My World," not released as a single.
Yeah.
And "Color My World" was it was my high school dance song.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, whenever there was a high school dance at St. Vincent St. Mary.
Last dance of the evening, when you finally worked up the courage to go ask that girl to dance, this is our song, want to dance with me on this?
So, side note, you went to an all-boys school.
Yeah, which was awkward.
It had to be really difficult for the dance. So you guys invited the girls to come to your Padua. He went to Padua in Parma when it was it's co-ed now.
It's co-ed now. A lot of them are anymore.
Yeah. Hoban was all boys, and then the first
Walsh
year,
was
the
all
Walsh,
boys.
and then by the time I got to high school, it was always co-ed.
Yeah, it was always co-ed.
Yeah. But so did you ever ask a girl to dance?
Oh yeah, I didn't dance well, but
Who did? You just went back.
you pretty much waited around until you finally realized this night is ending. I got to do something. So, and usually at the end of the dance, it was like, all right, thank you, bye.
Yeah, see ya. God Only Knows by the Beach Boys was the B-side, and the single was Wouldn't It Be Nice? And of course, Wouldn't It Be Nice was a smash.
Yeah.
But it got to a point with artists like Beach Boys and the Beatles or Elvis. It didn't matter what was on one side. They'd play both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then both sides would come up and artists would have two songs on the air going up the charts at the same time. So.
And also a lot of times back then there were sometimes artists who would cover songs by other artists and they were still on the charts.
Oh yeah,
Like
that
for
would be
instance,
weird.
I think "Light My Fire" by the Doors was on the charts at the same time as Jose Feliciano's "Light My
Oh
Fire."
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think Joe Cocker as well with "Get By with a Little Help from My Friends." So that was an interesting thing that they did. Let's get back to B-sides. There was another one, Elvis Presley. You've heard the song "Don't Be Cruel." On the other side was a song called "Hound Dog."
Ain't nothing but a
Believe
hound
that?
dog. Then we get to the Beatles. And
We
that
go
that
on
was
and on
the
about
point
the Beatles.
where the Beatles probably had so many songs on the charts at the same time. But what's interesting about the A and B sides that were released to radio for the Beatles is John and Paul everything was Lennon McCartney. But as Beatles fans learned later, after many interviews and books, and after they broke up, you learn that really they just put both of their names on both, and both of them contributed somehow, I'm sure. But there was a main writer on most of the songs, and Lennon's was a little more deep and trippy and introspective, and Paul was a little more poppy and hit-oriented. So they often released Paul's stuff.
Paul's version, yeah.
And Paul's
had wider
song.
appeal.
Yeah, they felt that the stuff Paul, and so it was like Paul's A, and John's on the other side was B, and it's interesting to hear what some of those were like. And again, it resulted in both of them being on the same time, and sometimes poppy stations would play the big hit, and then the rock stations like the AORs would play the more trippy version. But one of them was. John's, we've got a list I'm trying to remember and look at. Oh, Rain. The trippy Rain, that we talked about that in our last, the production value was crazy on that. Rain was the other side of Paul's paperback writer. So, Rain was the trippy one, and the paperback writer was the single.
I still remember having the 45 of Penny Lane. Literally, the little record with the big hole. Penny Lane on one side, flipped it on the other side, and it was Strawberry Fields Forever.
Oh, Strawberry Fields.
So yeah, Penny Lane was very poppy. The other side was a little bit deeper.
And Hey Jude
Hey
was
Jude, yeah.
actually, which he wrote about Julian Lennon. With Paul wrote it about John's son, and on the other side was Revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a rocker. And again, that didn't get played much as a single, but it did get played on rock radio as album cuts. And then John's Don't Let Me Down, and that was the B side, and then the A side was Get Back.
Get Back, yeah.
So, and I'm the Walrus, which was kind of a weird song. That was a B-side, and Hello, Hello, Goodbye, Hello, Hello.
Again, Paul the Poppier, Hello,
Yeah,
Goodbye.
and that's a real example of poppy Paul to trippy John, I'm the Walrus.
Yeah, with all the backwards masking and the hidden meanings of whether or not Paul was the walrus, and did Paul really die in that traffic accident way back when? That's another show entirely.
Yeah, we saw today an interview with Sheryl Crow on CBS This Morning, which I love that show. And she talked about how this album that she just did called Threads, which is duets with a bunch of amazing artists. She's got all kinds of artists who...
Willie, Chris Christopherson, I think Eric Clapton's on there.
Yeah.
Others,
Anyway, it's a bunch of duets. And she said this might be her last album. Not that she's retiring, but she's going to only start putting out singles now. So it's funny how I feel like it's all coming full circle, because singles are being released now, and now she's going back to that, and she feels bad. She says she mourns a little bit the loss of the LP, the loss of the album, because they were projects and you'd tell a whole story. And you talked about that before, about how...
Conceptual stuff.
Yeah, like The Wall, Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
They were concept albums, or, if somebody went through a heartbreak, they would write an album, or they were inspired by this place, like Netherlands, Dan Fogelberg, and that was what the whole album felt like, and there was a theme to it. Now everyone is downloading. They're not buying the whole project. You're buying 99 cents or $1.29 or whatever they cost downloads, and so labels are responding accordingly. Just give us a bunch of singles and see how they sell. If we get enough of them, we can do a whole project, an album. But if not, do an EP or just keep releasing singles.
Like she said, will she just find a song that speaks to her that she'll create and say, well, this is my work for now, but it won't be an album. It won't be part of a whole 12 or 14 song project.
Yeah, and I'm a little sad.
I'm sad about that. The reason being is,
I mean, that doesn't mean every artist is doing that, but
if you really, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but if you have an artist that you really cared for, Jackson Browne, Dan Fogelberg, for me it might have been Zeppelin, Springsteen, Floyd, something like that. They were your personal friends in a way. And when they put out something new, you'd read about it, like so and so's going to put out an album this year. It came out, you ran out and bought it, and you could spend like 40, 45, maybe 50 minutes with your friends again, and just letting whatever they
putting on the headphones, reading the words.
I'm open. I'm an open page here. Just go ahead and lay it all on me. I want to hear everything you guys have been up to for the last year. And if that takes us an hour, so be it.
But that was back when there were only 3 channels and no cable. And then, I mean, we didn't have the internet. I mean, think about how things are changed. Music was delivered. We only learned about new music on the radio, which is why we chose. By the way, I've got my radio themed shirt on too. This is the RCA. And
this is an RCA.
This is an RCA mic, a very old one that came from a radio station that my late husband Phil Cordell worked. And so yeah, I thought of the RCA mic. I thought I'd wear the RCA.
And I'm wearing the object.
Yeah. So
45s.
Well, gosh, I'm sure we can talk about nothing for a while longer, but maybe we should wrap up this edition of Couch Conversations. Thank you so much for watching, if you made it to the end. And we'll put, as we did before with our lists, I'll put the B-sides in the comments.
Yeah.
If you're interested or you want to comment on any. But thank you for watching, and cheers.
Cheers.